Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture, and the rogues who create them every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Wave Podcast and Twitch.tv/Rogue Wave Podcast. Download our podcast immediately following the live stream on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, Anchor, anywhere you can download podcasts. We will be found, or you can go to roguewavepodcast.com to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Please hit the subscribe button. Tonight, Revenge of the Sixth, all three Star Wars sequels reviewed together as one. We'll talk Clone Wars finale and Diamond Comics on the comeback. I am your host, Michael Dolce, as always joined by my co-host extraordinaire, the Lord of the Livestream himself, Mr. Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
It's Wednesday again. This keeps happening. This show is the only way I know how to keep up with the days of the week.
Yeah.
We must be in the middle of the week. We're doing the show.
So my wife and I have a date night scheduled for once a week, and we scheduled for Sunday night. And I literally said to her the other day, I said, all right, so what do you want to do tonight? I'm kind of tired. Do we want to try to watch something together? Do we want to just hang out and talk? Like because we don't go out for these date nights, obviously. And she's like, it's Sunday? She had no idea. She had no idea. So totally, yeah, I sympathize. It's tough, but hope is on the horizon. We will be hopefully phasing into the world in the next few weeks / months. So we'll see. Do you want something else to kind of jar you and make you feel incredibly? This doesn't make me feel old. But I'm going to pop it up on screen real quick. Yesterday was MTV VJ Kurt Loder's birthday. He turned 75.
He was always older, though. He was always like he was
5.
He was in his 40s or something when we were watching when we were kids.
No idea. I had no idea back then.
Like, you think he was 30? You think he was like 25?
Well, first of all,
Tabitha Soren was the young one.
Yes,
and she's not young anymore.
But first of all, here's the funny thing, right? Like back when I was a teenager, like maybe 14, watching, videos on MTV. And I hate being the one like, yeah, when they had videos. I would look at these guys, age is a distorted thing, right? Like I remember being like, well, 23 is when I'll get married and have kids because that's old, So you have a distorted view on like what old is. You might look at somebody when you're like 14 and be like, what are you, 40? And turns out he was. But, at the same time, you don't have a conception of what anything. At least I didn't. I had no conception past like what 25 years old was when I was a teenager.
I'll tell you something a little more messed up.
Okay.
By 2024, Kurt Loder's going to be 80.
If he's still here. When I saw him trending on Twitter yesterday, I was like, oh, did he die? Oh, no, he's still there. Still going.
80-year-old Kurt Loder is a little more. It's a little more shocking to the system than 75.
I don't know. 75. At this point now, I'm desensitized to Kurt Loder's age now. So when it says 80, I'll be like,
you're the one who brought it up.
Oh, I understand. I brought it up.
I was just trying to go with your stream of consciousness.
If we're still here in 5 years, meaning the Rogue Wave podcast, not us physically, we will celebrate the anniversary of the anniversary.
Aren't we supposed to just assume that we're supposed to assume success, right? We're supposed to fake it till we make it, right? So we are successful already. And so we'll be here for another 20 years.
We are almost, yeah. No, as a duo, we are 4 years in, and as me as a podcaster, I am almost 5 years in. So it's very, very exciting. But that is not
I'm
why.
Almost 20 years in as a podcaster. If you want to,
radio's not podcast. You could say radio, but it's not.
No, it's a podcast.
Okay. All right. Well, the folks did not come here to debate whether or not radio is a podcast or not. They came here to talk Star Wars. It is Revenge of the Sixth, which we kind of made up, or someone made up at some point because they couldn't decide Revenge of the Fifth or Revenge of the Sixth. So we're just jumping on the bandwagon.
Cinco de Mayo is the 5th.
Very good
May
point,
4th
actually.
is May 4th. Cinco de Mayo is the 5th. And then the 6th is Revenge of the Sixth. Because we had to take a day off in the middle of Star Wars days because of Cinco de Mayo. So now we get revenge.
Happy birthday to my cousin Leiden, who turned 4 on Cinco de Mayo, and also happy actual birthday for our former coworker and one of my best friends, Jared Cole, just had a daughter yesterday. So Cinco de Mayo. Just giving an actual happy birthday to Katerina, his daughter. We do this every week. We go through all the rage in the pop culture world. We call this Rogue Rage, and this is our Star Wars themed Rogue Rage. Taika Waititi to direct new Star Wars film. Disney usually saves a couple of announcements for Star Wars Day, May the 4th, and this year was no exception. Despite the global health crisis, Waititi, the filmmaker behind Thor Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit, will direct and co-write a new Star Wars movie for theatrical release. Oscar-nominated 1917 writer Christy Wilson Cairns will pen the script in January. The Hollywood Reporter broke the news that Lucasfilm was courting him for a new Star Wars film. So I haven't seen Jojo Rabbit. Have you seen that yet?
Nope.
I want to because I've heard really great things, and obviously with the Oscar accolades, I would like to see that. I saw Thor Ragnarok and enjoyed it, but my counter opinion on Thor Ragnarok is it's cotton candy. It is literally just it was. I have no desire to really necessarily go back and rewatch it. It was a fun movie. I do look back on it. For some, it's like their favorite Thor movie, but to me, it's not a Thor movie. It's just a really fun Chris Hemsworth Hulk movie, as best as I could kind of describe that. And my concern...
You're alone. You're alone on that.
No. I know That's people who are legitimate
I shall
fans.
Seek the preponderance argument and say that it's a very popular addition to the
very
Thor,
popular. Yes.
To the Thor franchise, in which
to the
case
Thor
everybody
franchise,
considers
but not to the character. To the character itself.
Who says who? Says
people who are longtime Thor
who
fans.
Who are people who are longtime
in my
Thor
comic book
fans?
shop that were
your comic
legitimate.
Book shop.
Who's
so,
like he's like it's great,
so
but it's
guys.
not actually Thor.
6 guys.
You don't like these arguments anyway, so now, but when it works in your favor, you use the argument.
I'm using your argument to show you how useless the argument is.
No, I literally am saying
no. Doesn't work.
It gives me a concern.
Doesn't work. I know many people. It made $1 billion. It's fine. It's good.
It gives me a concern.
Hundreds of thousands of people
for
love
a
it.
Star Wars. You're actually
Walt
using the
Simonson, who was the artist who made Thor famous. He loves the movie. So I mean, that's like
okay. Well, that's an actual endorsement that matters. I do agree.
All
with
the
that.
other endorsements matter, right? They matter when you use them.
I
It
enjoyed the movie.
This works.
Son, I enjoyed
like
the
this
movie.
argument. I know you said you enjoyed it, but then you denigrated it as not actually a Thor movie.
I'm not because I'm trying to get to my goddamn point, which is that the movie itself, I have concerns about him taking over a Star Wars franchise when you have people who obviously don't necessarily connect with stuff that is in previous installations of the movie, Last Jedi, Rian Johnson, taking something that and not actually using stuff from the character and putting that in. So that's my concern with him taking over a Star Wars film, which is what I would get to if you didn't ramble on some non-coherent point that made no sense and interrupted me.
It made perfect sense. It was very coherent. A lot of people are understanding right now how coherent my point was.
It was very incoherent. You were basically not letting me even get a sentence
Well, that was the point. That was kind of my point. But Taika Waititi also did an episode
blah,
of
blah, 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 blah. No point.
So, I mean, as pertains to you claiming that he doesn't really know how to navigate, he's already proven that he knows how to navigate the Star Wars universe.
Yes, he has navigated in a directorial fashion, but not in a story-driven fashion. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Directing TV is different than directing a feature film. Boy. No, it just is. It just is. You're adding.
I didn't say it wasn't. I just said, "Oh boy." I didn't actually say it wasn't.
All right,
because
so
it's
then
a shot
your
fired.
Oh boy, I don't understand.
It's kind of a shot fired.
It's a point of fact. When you're brought in to direct an episode or two.
I get you. I get what you're saying, but your previous argument was that he kind of had no affiliation with Star Wars when he came in, and then when he's coming in to do a Star Wars movie, and so that kind of concerns you. But
it concerned me not. It's not that he doesn't have previous affiliation with Star Wars. He has shown that a franchise, if he's coming on to direct, It's not as if he's going to adhere closely to the basis
How do you
for
know,
that.
though?
Because I watched Thor Ragnarok, and I thought Thor Ragnarok, while really fun movie.
Do you really think those are all his ideas, and that he didn't get permission or he didn't run it by the entire Marvel?
Yeah, but Ryan Johnson ran it by Kathleen Kennedy, and we ended up with Last Jedi. So
that's true, but I'm saying you cannot use Thor Ragnarok as an example of him going off book, right? Because he probably had to clear everything that he did in Thor Ragnarok for the MCU. So that's not technically a great example of him going rogue and making whatever Thor movie he wanted. He had, he lined that up, and he had the permission to do to make the changes that he made.
Sure.
And then that all the changes he did, he still very smoothly fitted into the Infinity Saga, so that it leaves us off at a right place so that we could pick up the Infinity War right after that, right? So,
which I think is when it comes down to vetting. When I think it comes down to vetting, I think is what ultimately the oversight is. Aside from making Thor a deranged, serial killer or something drastic to that end, I think when you sit there and say the tone and the
right, but I enjoyed it as a Thor
movie.
We don't even know what TD is going to be making a Star Wars movie about, right? Because supposedly the saga's over. So he doesn't have any characters that we know of that he can ruin, right?
True.
So it's just kind of, I can understand being a little concerned or whatever, but I'm more interested or intrigued than concerned because it can't be it can't be worse than what we were about to talk about. So,
well, look, like I said, I enjoyed Thor Ragnarok. So, and from what I gathered, Jojo Rabbit is an exceptionally well-made movie. So, from a filmmaker standpoint, I'm excited to see what he can bring. But I am also I have my antennas up. I definitely have my ears up, saying, I liked Looper. I enjoyed Looper as a movie, and I was excited for Rian Johnson, and look what happened. And then some would argue it was a breath of fresh air. I will not argue that, but
that's fine. That's up to them how they feel about it. That's
The other bit of news, and this one I will completely be relying on you, is that the Clone Wars TV series, the cartoon series, the much lauded Clone Wars TV series has come to an end. The season 7 finale is about as perfect an ending to the show as fans could hope. And that was ScreenRant.com's take on it. While it might not have answered every question.
What kind of nonsense is that? Oh my God.
While it could not have answered every question or flashed forward so far it fully connected to the later films in the saga, it focuses on the most important relationships in Clone Wars. Those are the clones between Ahsoka and Rex and between Ahsoka and Anakin.
Okay.
That was a review from Screen Rant.
Yeah, it's a shitty review. Excuse my language.
Bing! We're just cursing left and right.
I didn't curse at all today. It's
you literally just
now, but that was the first time.
And I said G damned, and which I would like to not.
Oh well, that's you. Anyway, why? As best as a finale as fans could hope, what kind of nonsense way of phrasing a statement is that? That's freaking ridiculous. It's like, it was good. We liked it. It was a good ending. Or didn't really like it, or it didn't go. It didn't. That's a critique. It didn't go where we expected. Didn't go where we wanted. This is as best as fans. What kind of nonsense is that? That doesn't neither says it was good nor that it was bad. It doesn't embellish or explain any position.
Sure.
It's a non-position, and that's why it's nonsense. Of course, the article goes on to elaborate, but it's elaborating already from a point of ambiguousness. That's nonsense.
It basically elaborates and says, well, it may not have answered every question or flashed forward so far fully connected to the later films. It focused on the most important relationships in Clone Wars. So it was basically
the article flash forward to future films? I don't know what would be how could you flash forward to 30 years?
I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. That's nonsense. It didn't flash forward to future films.
Maybe there are fans out there who want it to flash forward.
It's fine. It literally. I'm not talking about fans and what fans wanted or who wanted and whatnot. I'm just talking about the articles, the information conveyed in the article in and of itself, which is nonsense, right?
Okay.
Because we cannot know what the fans wanted and what the fans didn't want. We can't know what future desires are versus the content that they're getting. All we know is what we have and how we react to what we have. So, I mean, to expect that the Clone Wars should then end with it looking 50 years into the future, which by the end of the Clone Wars would put The Force Awakens 50 years into the future, right? Sure. What kind of nonsense is that? How are we going to get that? And literally, since you don't know this, literally the last 4 episodes coincide with
Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah,
I do my homework. I might not necessarily watch the shows, but I read up on.
Okay, great for you. It literally coincides. It's interspersed throughout Revenge of the Sith, so it connects with the last movie of the saga.
Yeah.
Up until The Force Awakens. So what do they talk? I mean, like I said, again, the article is nonsense. It literally doesn't say anything.
What did you think of the finale?
I thought it was very good.
Was it everything you could have hoped for?
Nothing is everything I could have hoped for, including this conversation. but it was really good. It was a really solid, really thoughtful, caring ending. It was very emotional. There are more things than I would have wanted, but that doesn't mean that because I didn't get it, this was the best I could hope for. No. It means you assess whether the more that you wanted was realistic or logical, or you assess that the more that you wanted, compared to what you got, you didn't need the more you wanted, know, or the more you wanted may have been a little naive, or it may have been a little ambitious or whatever. It was a very good, very just excellently done series of episodes. I have my issues with the episodes in the middle of the season, but the beginning and the end of the season are fantastic. Yeah, and it coincides very well with the movies, with the saga, and it's good, especially if you're like me and you think the saga ended with Revenge of the Sith, which it did. So anyway,
the saga ended. What are you talking about?
The contemporary movies. That was Revenge of the Sith is the last movie in the saga. It is not the last episode, but it's the last movie in the saga, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't.
Chronologically speaking, it was the last movie made.
All right, chronologically speaking, right.
I said it wasn't it's not the last episode, but it's the last movie.
Right.
They made.
Okay.
So it coincided with the last produced movie in the saga, as pertains to my opinion.
With knowing
them other
that,
movies ain't movie.
With knowing that Ahsoka is going to be in The Mandalorian, and
maybe.
Rosario Dawson was cast. We kind of, we didn't.
I saw Dave Filoni have a conversation about that, and he was kind of weird and ambiguous about it. So, yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean yes, it doesn't mean no, it doesn't mean anything. So, yeah, we could go ahead and yes.
Yeah, so knowing that, what other tidbits should folks watch out for when they watch Mandalorian? Easter eggs, if you will, from the Clone Wars that we haven't gotten, that you would predict might be.
There's not going to be much from the Clone Wars because the Clone Wars is 20 years before the Mandalorian, so there's not going to be a lot of holdover, with the exception maybe of Ahsoka. And maybe a couple of battle droids or something like that. I don't know how the Clone Wars would bleed into, because that era ended. The Republic era ended at the end of the Clone Wars cartoon. Yeah. And it went right into everything got bled out, and everything was flat grays and blacks, and the colors were the color palette was like totally tossed out at the end of Revenge of the Sith. And then we got the kind of gray and black and bland motif of the original trilogy. Yeah. Which was made to look like that on purpose, right? It was kind of run down, everything was depleted and dilapidated. So and then the aftermath of that, after Return of the Jedi going into The Mandalorian, things are even a little worse as the galaxy supposedly tries to pick itself up, put itself back together, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how much bleed over there's going to be from the Clone Wars era, from the Republic era into Mandalorian. But we'll see. I mean, it seems to be in good hands. They seem to be enjoying themselves. They seem to understand that they need to be faithful to at least the mythology, if nothing else, while making new characters. And the audience seems open to new characters when done in that way. So that's a good thing.
All right.
I think.
Well, we've dished about the past, and now we're going to do it one more time, except Disney Plus released Rise of Skywalker on Monday to Disney Plus. Disney released Rise of Skywalker to Disney Plus on Monday. So we thought it would be amazing and exhausting at the exact same time if we were to review all three of the sequels as one whole unit, back to back to back, which I did watch back to back to back. So when we come back, we will give you a review and talk, did it hold up? Did it hold together? Did Rise of Skywalker save the franchise? Did Last Jedi save the franchise? Did this franchise need saving? Was there anything good about any of this stuff? We will give you our take when we come back.
Star Wars sucks.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. This is our revenge of the sixth spectacular. Yeah, you're very feisty today. I'm not going to lie. We bring you the pop culture stuff you love to talk about and dive deep behind the rogues behind it. And you can go to roguewavepodcast.com to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts. If you're on Spotify, just follow us. You can look us up on Google Podcasts, Google Play, all that fun stuff. Please download, subscribe. Check us out coming to YouTube very soon. All right. I thought this would be fun, and I think it is. Look, it
well, hold on. Let me ask you, right? Because you did it, right?
Yes.
Was it beneficial? You sat. Let me give context to the audience. You sat through The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker in a sitting. Relatively.
Right?
Yeah.
I went to sleep and then.
No, you got kids and stuff, so I know it wasn't back to back. But
do you know what I managed to do? Do you know what I managed to do?
What'd you do?
I managed to start the next one as soon as I finished the previous one, every single time. So there was, there was continuity.
Okay.
With all that, so that was good.
So you went from The Force Awakens right into The Last Jedi.
Right into Last Jedi, yes.
And then you went from The Last Jedi right into
Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, so what did you think? How was the experience for you?
So first of all, it was very exhausting. I'm not gonna lie.
It's gonna be when you watch like 9 hours worth of movie. It's gonna
right. But I say this in it's an interesting context, right? Like I feel I could do. I guess any sitting would be exhausting. This one was a little especially exhausting because it's not as if you're watching the Indiana Jones trilogy or the original trilogy of Star Wars films, or anything where you can sit there and say there's three, films in a row where you're like totally
three chapters that are happening that are going on.
To where you can sit there and be like so super excited. But that being said, I think rewatching Indiana Jones trilogy or like I said the original Star Wars trilogy, I think would be it would be exhausting, from a just a physical standpoint, but not mentally.
Right.
This was mentally. Right. This mentally got exhausting. However,
why is that, do you think?
However, that being said, I found significant benefits to doing it, to viewing this as a whole versus individual movies. Now, when Last Jedi came out, you did the double screening of Force Awakens into Last Jedi, so you did this run, which is good. That being said, I wish you'd also would have done the Last Jedi into Rise of Skywalker because there was a period in the middle of Last Jedi where I sat there and go, okay, I see where JJ took the seeds, and spoilers if you haven't seen Rise of Skywalker by now, took some of the seeds and said, okay, there's a point in Last Jedi when she goes into the dark cave and she sees darkness. I'm sitting there going, okay, I could see where he started, thinking about why the Emperor could make sense bringing the Emperor back. Whereas originally watching Rise of Skywalker, after not having seen Last Jedi in 2 years or something like that, you sit there and go, oh my God, this thing really came out of left field. It's still, the way he executes it still comes out of left field. But watching Last Jedi, I go, oh, darkness. Oh, okay, I see this. There's, I could see the points where he mined that concept to bring it and introduce it into Rise of Skywalker. The other thing watching it in succession did for me, and the reason I say you did the original Force Awakens into Last Jedi, never having seen Last Jedi before, having seen Last Jedi before, so knowing what was to come, it gives you a different perspective. And seeing Rise of Skywalker and giving it, a different perspective. There's a lot to it where I can sit there and really fully kind of encapsulate myself in all three films, in all three chapters. So, for example, I took notes. I took lots of, very compulsive note taker here, comprehensive notes. I gotta be honest with you. At the end of Force Awakens, Snoke literally tells General Hux, "Come to me with Kylo Ren. We must complete his training." Mm-hmm. That was the last official order, Snoke says.
Mm-hmm.
And the beginning of Last Jedi, the beginning of Last Jedi is, there's no reference to the fact they just blew up the Starkiller base. Like it was as if it was as if Rian Johnson had not watched Force Awakens to realize. And the funny thing is, it's such a simple decision to have Last Jedi take place immediately after Force Awakens, chronologically speaking, where if he'd had just done what Empire Strikes Back did, and yes, it takes place after they blew up the Death Star, but the Empire is still around and is still there, but you get the sense that there was.
But he wanted the benefit of the evacuation of Hoth. He wanted the benefit of being able to do that with that kind of level of excitement. So they were evacuating Octu. No, is that Octu? No.
Could be.
Whatever planet that was. The sequels, I never committed any, except for the Hosnian system, which is what was blown up in the Force Awakens. That's the only, and Octu is the planet that Luke is on.
Yes.
And Exegol is the Sith planet. Those are the only names of planets that actually stuck out to me. So he wanted the energy of the rebels evacuating, which was a kind of a nod at Hoth, at the Empire Strikes Back. But he didn't want to have to go through the
right. That's it's a simple decision. Honestly, it doesn't have to be as meticulously done as it was in Empire Strikes Back for them to start evacuating. Mind you, it's not even close to the evacuation of Hoth. Hoth was such. I mean that is an actual. You're watching a war.
It's a whole first act. Yeah, it's an entire first act of a film.
Yeah, so he wants the ticking clock. He wants the ticking clock in the evacuation, but he doesn't want to put the work into actually getting us there. But my point is,
he literally cut to the chase. He honestly,
but he doesn't even have to put in that much work. It's not like you have to do a lot of work to have people escaping a planet. But then you could have. But then you have the benefit of, okay, I get it that JJ left him off with Rey handing off the lightsaber to Luke. So in that regard, yes, I guess in his mind, he's like, well, I guess we have to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But no, you don't. You literally could have had Rey come. I mean, there's a million different ways you could have went to where Rey is.
Yeah, you could have started off. They could have been halfway through their training by the time he came back to them.
Yes.
Right? You could have implied that he said, "Oh, come in, eat something, and I'll show you how to use the."
Yes.
I mean, if that's the way he wanted to go with it, right? He could have done anything. He didn't have to pick up exactly where the last. In fact, I think personally that was the detriment of his own story. Is that he put the restrainers on himself by coming in exactly where the last one left off, so he couldn't establish a new feel, establish new rules, establish a new circumstances, because he picked it up exactly where the last film left off. And that's another reason why the audience, half of the audience, because a lot of people like the Last Jedi.
They love it. They think it's the greatest. Yes.
That is the reason why, say, roughly, theoretically, half the audience was kind of outraged by it, because if you're gonna follow on the coattails of another movie that a lot of people liked, they're gonna expect a continuation of that thing, not for you to deconstruct that last movie and the previous 6 movies that came before it. But go ahead.
Correct, and that could have been avoided. That one simple decision could have been avoided. So it was interesting to see that. It was interesting to. Because again, knowing what was to come, I made it a point to really super pay attention to the very end of Force Awakens. Now, that being said, Last Jedi was a better film than all 3 of the films. Wasn't a great Star Wars film. Watching it again,
it's my take on The Dark Knight. You know,
yes,
it's a fantastic film. It's just a terrible Batman film.
I wouldn't call it a fantastic film because there were still so many things about it that were jarring to me.
Which one? The Last Jedi?
Last Jedi. But I would sit there and say,
I meant The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was a fantastic film. But The Last Jedi is a better film than it is a Star Wars film.
Yeah, it was actually, I enjoyed it a lot more. And I'll tell you right now, the scene where Kylo Ren is in with Snoke and Rey, you know, again, 2 years later, 3 years later, I know what ends up happening. I'm still kind of on the edge of my seat in that particular scene. There are scenes in Last Jedi that I sit there and go, wow, this is really, this is entertaining. This is well done. This is well executed within the confines of a movie that made no sense. So it's interesting where
I could maybe contextualize why a lot of the things didn't make any sense to you. And to most of us, all right, not in an accusatory way.
No, but
basically, it seems like Rian Johnson and also J.J. Abrams, to an extent, were proceeding from an assumption that enough has been established about these characters, enough background has been given about the characters, enough development has been attributed to these characters, that now all you have to do is put them into high stakes. And you have the audience on the edge of their seats, right? But the problem is, it wasn't really, in my opinion. A lot of that work wasn't done. By the time that throne room scene happened, I still didn't even really know who Rey was, much less, you know. I knew more about Kylo Ren because I knew who his family was, and I knew the sacrifice that the vile sacrifice that he made in The Force Awakens in order to declare his allegiance to the dark side or whatever, for whatever reason that is never explained as to why he decided to turn. I can understand why he turned against Luke in that story that he tells, but that doesn't mean why he decides that he should be on the dark side. And that is
they never go into it. I know. No. So I wrote that also, and I thought this is interesting. While watching The Force Awakens, the Force Awakens just tried to cram too much into one film. The Star Killer base. Kylo Ren immediately revealed as Han and Leia's kid. Snoke, the Emperor, comes out of nowhere, middle of the second act. You know where the Emperor. It took three movies to actually set up the Emperor. You know that there was a higher level. And yes, I agree with you that
slightly too because the Emperor is in Empire Strikes Back. But
yes, he's foreshadowed
until he becomes a genuine threat. It takes 3
Correct.
movies.
So you have more plot points than the movie actually needs. It really is. It's an amazing. I don't want to say. I'm not using the word amazing in a complimentary standpoint here. I'm just saying it's an amazing amount of plots that you could that were put into Force Awakens. Yeah, that was unnecessary. I still my initial reaction. This is the 3rd time I've now watched, or maybe the 4th time I've watched Force Awakens. It's a really good movie up until Han Solo gets into it.
I'd say it's a solid adventure movie, solid Star Wars movie, all the way up until, for my opinion, I'm almost right 100% with you. Right up until Finn crashes on Jakku, then it starts to slow down and starts to become a pastiche of past experiences and a lot of nostalgic imagery and
you know what though I could see what you're saying.
Then there's that weird reveal of the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, but that was kind of funny. I was okay with that. But that's what, if they'd have done that throughout the entire film, these little nods rather than trying to cram 2 stories in, you know.
And they didn't need those characters. They really did not need Han, Luke, and Leia. They didn't.
No.
Because if there was no Luke, right, and it was just no Jedi in the galaxy, and Rey is a Force user who finds out that she should be, all 3 movies were her trying to find out about the Force because the Jedi were gone for whatever reason. And then you use the 3rd movie to explain what happened to Han, Luke, and Leia, and why the Jedi didn't come back into prominence or whatever. Yeah. That's a much more compelling story than just, okay, we're going to have her do the Luke journey all over again, and we're going to have gonna have hints and nods, and we're going to do story beats from the previous trilogy because that's what the people want. And honestly, there's some people who want that, and that's fine. People want a continuation of their favorite story.
Right.
That's what they want. If you prove that this story can be continued, and there can be integrity added, there can be new things added, and then there will be attributable respect to what came before you. We're not going to rip apart what came before in order to build something new. Then I think all of this stuff would have been acceptable. I think Daisy Ridley is a fantastic actress.
She's really good. Adam Driver is amazing in these movies. He's the Anakin we never got. Yeah, he's the Anakin we never got. He's the actor.
In your opinion, that's fine.
What, you liked Hayden Christensen? Because I just didn't like Hayden Christensen. I didn't like his performance at all.
I know. We've been over it.
I know.
We're talking about the sequels, not the prequels.
And then there's just little attention to detail again, where Ken Lung, where was he in the second movie? Like he was like running the show in the first one, and then all of a sudden in the second one he's nowhere to be found. Unless I missed that he died in Force Awakens, but I don't think he did.
No.
He just stopped being in the movie, and there's all these same questions.
There's weird stuff. There's these weird beats.
How does it Holdo know who Poe is, and how does Poe not know who Holdo is?
And where did she come from?
And why wasn't she in the first? Right, if she was she was in the first movie, or if she was there, why was she not there?
And
there's only 400 of them, and they're all like, if there's only 400 rebels, which they specifically say 400, how many of those are chain of command has to be less than 50? You don't know, and you're supposed to be like the top commander in Leia's army. How have you never met this other person? Like, it's little things where you sit there and just go, these are just odd choices. Overall, I enjoyed Last Jedi a lot more the second time around, as a film, in terms of just, but the same questions are there. And essentially Rian Johnson had no idea what to do with Poe, with Leia, with Finn, with Rose. Rose is Rose. He
wasn't interested in them. He wasn't. It's not only did he not know what to do with them, but he seemed thoroughly uninterested in anything that they were going to do.
Yeah,
I mean, in the Empire Strikes Back, even though Han and Leia were not not the journeymen that Luke was, there was a substantial amount that they had to do. There was a substantial amount of peril that he put them in, and character and story development for those two characters. True, it was a love story.
Sure.
So there wasn't, they developed in the context of each other. And yes, you can honestly say that Chewbacca and R2 and C-3PO did not get any more character development. They were literally sideline characters. That's the cost of doing business, and then that was the way that story was designed.
Sure.
So you could say it's not 100% perfect if you're looking for perfect unilateral character development. But the three main characters continue to develop steadily as the story progressed. In the Last Jedi, two of the main characters stopped progressing
and actually went in reverse.
Yeah, to an extent,
they regressed.
They became petulant. Yeah, they like Poe became petulant. Finn became a coward again. And then he went on some weird casino.
Poe was never petulant to begin with, though. Poe was actually pretty even keeled.
Well, that's what I said. He became petulant.
Right. He'd be right. Yeah. Right. Sorry. Yeah. So it was things like that kind of got it. Funny thing though, again, rewatching it, the Kylo Ren stuff actually made more sense the second time around. It was very jarring the first time when I watched Last Jedi. I'm like, why is she into him? It doesn't make any sense. But then you start to think about it in the context of, okay, she literally just met all these people. So because it's literally a day. It's literally the two movies took place over the course of like 48 hours or whatever the heck. Maybe not 48 hours, but it was
whatever ridiculousness. Because honestly, there was supposed to be 18 hours that the rebels before the rebels ran out of fuel, and yet it's literally days on Octo that Rey is there, and it's like I guess time is different.
Yeah, no,
they,
so but it's again that the decision to not breathe by Rian Johnson created this false ticking clock that ultimately it just I don't like being pulled out of movies. Forget the meta Star Wars-ness of it. I'm not even going to go there anymore. Because at that point,
it's
I kind of over the Yoda using the Force to blow up the tree, and
that's what I don't get about what people say about it being a great movie, because it's really not. It does a lot of rudimentarily stupid things. Like, for instance, it's constantly explaining a ticking clock instead of showing you a ticking clock. Right? There are dozens of moments in the film where, especially one that stands out is at the end when they're on the Battle of Crete, the other planet I remember. And then, they do coverage of one guy goes, "We're running out of ships." Okay, we can see that. We don't need the dialogue padding for you to point to the audience. Oh, the situation is dire. Show a lot of people getting killed, and we'll be like, "Oh, this is bad." We got to get out of this.
Moment in that battle too is still so. There's three moments.
It doesn't make any sense
in Last Jedi that are extraordinary in terms of like suspense. Like it's actually built me up to suspense. I mentioned the Snoke confrontation in the throne room, which again the suspense was fantastic. For me anyway. The Finn moment as well. The Luke battle I actually enjoyed, but again, it's one of those suspension of disbelief of just like I guess the Force you could just do anything with the Force.
And
with no explanation that you can do it. You just can. You can track people through light speed. Why? You just can.
Just use the Force.
They figured out how to do it. Oh, I didn't know that was even I didn't even know it was a thing to think about, that it could be a thing or not a thing. It just was, oh my God.
It was in Star Wars, though. I mean, they were tracking the Millennium Falcon. That's how they found Yavin, which is, which Leia says they're tracking us, So, I mean, it's not like it's an unheard of thing to be able to track people through light speed. So why it was so vexing to the Resistance,
right? Yeah.
They were being tracked. It's like, what do? We don't know how to do. We don't know how to solve this particular problem. It's like, well, if you're a bunch of veterans of the Civil War, right? As a guerrilla war that you went up against the Galactic Empire, and you don't know how to deal with being tracked through hyperspace. That's
right.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I know.
It's a very pretty. It's the thing I would say the sequels have way over the originals and the prequels is that they're very stylistically gorgeous movies, And I mean, like as far as I'm concerned, this is damning it with faint praise. It really is, and I don't make any apologies about that. The biggest contribution they made is that lightsabers cast light. Because if you watch the prequels and you watch the original movies, it was just so much that they could do to rotoscope those the light effect.
Right.
So they didn't have the except for when Yoda has a lightsaber
because he's
doing it all CG.
Point,
right?
Exactly.
Then the light actually reflects on Yoda's face, but everybody else is just it might as well be a stick because it was right. So now in the woods where Rey is fighting Kylo and you can see the blue glow of her lightsaber on her and his red. That's okay. That's a contribution. That's a stylized contribution. The look of it is just beautiful. The special effects, but that's because it's got the benefit of another 10 years effects development from the prequels. So you can't even attribute that as a genuine contribution because there was really nothing. There was nothing that you had to sacrifice to gain that technology, right? That you're standing on the shoulders of a whole bunch of other productions to be able to utilize the best production that money could buy. It better, as billion-dollar movies, it better look like that. That better be the way your blockbusters look. So really, we're talking about story. We're talking about characters. We're talking about like what is probably the greatest modern day fable, in pop culture history, right? Of Star Wars, right? you are going to take up the mantle of that. You assume to take up the mantle of the last
you
three
would
chapters.
Think, yeah. I mean, you would think that it's not something you'd kind of half-ass.
That's what I don't understand. That's why I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Like, okay, especially The Last Jedi. The Last Jedi it commits crimes that outweigh all the other crimes, because all of the criticism of The Force Awakens was that the movie decided to remake A New Hope, and didn't slow down to explain anything that was going on. It didn't attribute it didn't show any training for Rey. It didn't really explain anything what happened to Luke. It didn't explain what the First Order was, why there's a resistance while there's still a republic. Right. It didn't bother to do any of that stuff. It was the anti-prequels, which was very funny that the biggest complaint is that it didn't bother to explain anything to us, where the biggest complaint about the prequels was it explained too much.
It over-explained, yes.
Yeah, that it was
went
talking
into
about
the
tax
minutia.
disputes and stuff.
But
like that's world building, right? That's I mean, you could argue about the effectiveness of it, but that's world building. When you don't have that at all, you realize that it's a slippery slope, right?
Yes.
So then you have The Last Jedi, and you have dozens of slow moments where the story is supposedly breathing, and you go, okay, Ryan, now's your chance. Start explaining stuff to us. Start pointing things out to us. Start making corrections for the Force Awakens. Start training Rey so nobody can call her a Mary Sue anymore.
Right.
Start explaining Luke so everybody understands why the Jedi weren't bad. Start explaining the First Order so everybody understands they're not the Empire, but they're a different power that rose up in the vacuum of power from the Empire. Start doing that. And Ryan Johnson's like, nah, not gonna. I'm gonna give you porgs, and I'm gonna give a half-ass explanation as to why Luke decided that he was not going to be a hero anymore. And the information I'm going to give you, since I'm not going to do any research or make any mythological entries of my own, the information I'm going to give you is the information we got from the last 6 movies, right? Which is the information that Luke had at the end of Return of the Jedi. He knew everything that he claimed were his motivations to Rey. So what happened between the 30 years from from Return of the Jedi to The Last Jedi that he just decided, I give up? Because he didn't learn anything new.
Right. The argument could be that the emotional impact of losing Han and
then you
Leia's
say
son
that
to the dark side is
and you didn't even lose Han.
He did. No, he didn't. He lost.
That's the other mistake.
Right.
That's the other mistake. If you're a storyteller and you're going to say your hero decided to kill a kid in his sleep, right? Could happen. Could happen. It's a possibility. You got to show us what he saw that made him make that decision. Yes. And then you let the audience go, yeah, I don't know. If I saw that, I might have had to make that decision. He just told
you. He said, I saw the dark side in you. And that's the issue with
he showed,
Rise of Skywalker
he told
too.
Instead of showing. And that's the big mistake. And it's a movie. It's not a book. Right. You're not supposed to do that in prose. You can't do that in a movie. Yeah. Okay? You definitely can't do that in a movie. So
this is the other thing though too. Whereas Last Jedi, watching it a second time and in succession, I actually enjoyed it more. I going right into Rise of Skywalker and kind of leveraging some of your points. I actually enjoyed Rise of Skywalker so much less the second time around, having just watched Last Jedi 2, just because
I told you. I know I told you for a fact I was never watching that movie again. Yeah. I know I said that for a fact. There's no way.
Going full circle with the Emperor was the right move. JJ mined scenes from Last Jedi that could explain it. Didn't execute it right, but at least
I don't think it was the right move, to be honest with you. But that's
okay. It might not have been the right move, but at least doing the succession thing, I'm like, okay, at least I could see where there was at least some continuity in the second movie, because she goes
making her the Emperor's granddaughter might have been the right thing, but to have the Emperor in it, which kind of destroys Return of the Jedi. Yeah, you don't destroy what you built to build something to add to it. You don't destroy half your house to add another half. It doesn't make any sense. It's a Pyrrhic victory at best. So,
and also, look, again, it was a better Star Wars movie than it was a movie. Last Jedi was a better movie than a Star Wars movie, only because it had the elements of what would make a good Star Wars movie. It had the characters all together.
Too late.
Doing this, trying to take on these challenges
on a fetch quest. Yeah.
However, we got more development from Kerry Russell's character in, I don't know, the 10 minutes she was on screen than we got of all the main characters. It's like they didn't care anything about these main characters.
No, there was no time. They were slaves to spectacle. We got to make it big. We got to make it amazing. We got to make it gigantic.
And then just bringing in the gang of former stormtroopers that rebelled. That reneged.
Just bring them up, but not show them, not introduce them to us, not explain, and then to suggest that they were all force sensitive, right? Because that's what Finn does.
Which I thought was an interesting concept. There's just interesting concepts everywhere that are just never explored.
In the hands of really bad writers who don't care. It's not going to go anywhere. There's no faith done to it.
I think JJ cared too much in Rise to make sure to course correct a lot of the meta stuff that was going on.
You can't really. How do you course correct a lot of that stuff?
But I actually would have rather he didn't.
He added the most egregious thing, which is that just random force healing thing. Now, healing in the force is part of canon, but not like that. It doesn't work. It's not Jesus, you can't just
no, I know. And
then
he brings up the Knights of Ren, who I thought was the guards in in Snoke's chamber, but I guess they're not. I guess they were their own.
Those were just the royal, the shitty royal guard. It's like, oh my god!
That who apparently are trained fighters, and
at least you got to see what
Ray picked up a lightsaber yesterday.
Oh, stop! Don't even. I mean, that's the thing. And then he Rian Johnson actually adds to that because Snoke even says she never held a lightsaber before. So now now you can't even argue the time dilation thing or the the all the other things that you want to try to add to it. The fact that she knew how to fight because she fought on Jakku with a staff weapon and she had the fundamentals of it, whatever. Yeah. No, you can't, because the very next movie, the guy actually points out what everybody else has been saying. It's like, wait a minute, you can't just go from a stick to a lightsaber. You couldn't go from a baseball bat to a sword. You can't. Right. It's the same. The principle is similar, but you can't kill yourself as easily with a baseball bat as you can with a sword.
Right. Look, you can argue. You can argue that Luke, learned about the Force and immediately, it's like, now I understand the Force. However, there is time lapse that goes between it to where you could sit there and go, well, he did, like he was technically training. However, those time lapses in Empire Strikes Back don't necessarily make sense either.
They don't make sense, but okay, here's what they do. They give you an understanding that time has passed. They give you the progression. So you've gone away and you've come back. So it's just like any normal situation with family that you have. You're close to your cousins or whatever. The last time you were in Texas, they were here. The next time you go there, 2 years later, a year later, they're in a different place. They're driving different cars. So you don't need the minutia to know that they have made changes in their lives, to know that their life is slightly different from the last time you saw them. Right. And then you make adjustments in your expectations and your understandings, and you go along with it, Now, it's not quite the same, but it is the time dilation is a storytelling advantage that you use to cover up some holes that may or may not be there. And in my opinion, Empire Strikes Back does it very well. The Attack of the Clones actually gave the benefit of 10 years. Of course, they had to explain why Hayden Christensen was in the movie all of a sudden. But, I mean, in the process of 10 years, Hayden Christensen can now be a Jedi. Right. Or, whatever. And you go, all right, you learned that in the 10 years. I mean, you don't need those moments to be able to do the math on your own. So if you don't give yourself a little bit of space, then you do, unfortunately, as a storyteller, have to explain things. Yeah. Right? And if you don't want to explain anything, then maybe don't make it a direct sequel to the previous film. I mean, it's rudimentary.
Couple quick little notes, too, as we're kind of running up against the break here, too, though. Rise of Skywalker, to me, you mentioned the fetch quest. It just felt like a video game. the entire time. It's like, in order to get to the next level, you need to go here. And now you've accomplished this, and now you need to go here. And
if
it's
Woody
like, okay,
had gone to the police, this would never have happened.
Which again, I'm not like too angry about, but it was just something that I kind of noticed the second time around too. General Pride, again, who the F is this guy? I went and I actually looked up his Wikipedia. And there's an entire backstory with this guy.
Wow, you actually did do homework.
I told you I did homework because I was like, maybe
because all that stuff's going to go in the books.
Maybe being a Star Wars geek is and not being a Star Wars nerd is impacting my level of understanding. So I did some more research. So I jumped from geekdom to nerddom, and I delved deep. And they give this incredible backstory, and I'm like, and then I was looking, okay, did it happen in any of the major films? Did I miss it? Was he in like the original trilogy? Did they pluck someone from the original?
That's what happens in the original, though. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we know about the original stories that weren't in those movies, right? But on the other hand...
But the characters were actually set up in a way that you're not sitting there going, well, who's this guy?
Yeah, I was going to say that the stories are done in such a way that you don't really need that information. And then everything else that's given is like an embellishment on it. It's not something that it's not knowledge you require.
Right.
It's just knowledge that that's kind of cool when you get it, as opposed to them doing that on purpose with this and then saying, well, you'll find the knowledge that you really need in the books. So buy our books and then you'll know things.
Yeah. There's little
it's
things.
Not quite the way things work. A lot of people aren't going to do that work.
There's little things like that in Rise and Last Jedi. I don't know why Leia waited until the Empire or the First Order arrived to shut the doors. She's like, they're here, shut the doors. It's like, wait, why didn't you just shut the doors before they got here? Like, and meanwhile they're like running from this thing, and it just happens to be like Finn and Rose in there. I still don't understand, like just little decision making, like the milk scene. Like it looked like there's scenes
because it's humor, man. This guy's trying so hard.
It's like Monty
cute.
Python. Like I'm literally watching Monty Python. I am literally watching the scenes in Monty Python. Ben running was to me like the Monty Python.
Luke is cut off. Yeah, Luke is cut off from the Force, right? How do you kill that fish? No average human being could have fished like that. I'm sorry, you're a superhero when you could do that. When you could jump when you could pole vault from one side of a cliff to another, and then use this gigantic spear to kill a huge fish. Yeah. And then what? I guess how did he get that up to the? I mean, it's just the whole thing was not. And they show that, and you're like, oh yeah, well Luke's a freaking ninja, so that's how he did that. And then later, moments later, they say you're not using the Force. Like Rey says, I don't see you. You just cut yourself off from the Force. Well, okay.
Getting back to the humor,
that contradicts the scene we just saw.
Getting back to the humor aspect too, I mean, he just picks these really strange times. It's this intense battle, and Kylo Ren has just taken over being the supreme leader, and he goes to Hux, and he's like, "I want everything concentrated on the blow on those speeders." And then Hux goes, "I want everything concentrated on the speeders." And Kylo looks at him like, "Dude, I just said that. Why would you?" And I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like it made no sense. It just made no sense. And the biggest question mark, of course, is again having watched it in succession. Poe references the fact that they did the distress call and no one showed up in Last Jedi, and I don't understand except for the fact that
Lando amasses the biggest fleet that any human being's ever seen in 15 minutes in The Rise of Skywalker.
So I thought that was
slash Endgame. The Rise of Skywalker / Endgame.
So my review, as I started, it was exhausting. It was an exhausting watch. Let us never do this ever again. When we come back, we go spinning the racks. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, talking comics, movies, TV, and pop culture, and the rogues behind it every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can go to facebook.com/Rogue Wave podcast for the live stream, and twitch.tv/Rogue Podcast for the live stream, and then you can find us in all major podcasting apps. We are big fanboys of comics and graphic novels, and every week we like to bring you the inside info and the source material that will make its way onto the large and small screen, including Star Wars, which hopefully rebounds. We call this segment Spinning the Rex.
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
Marvel, DC, Image, and more, part of Diamond's May 20th shipping list. May 20th is the return to comic book stores that we've all been waiting for. Diamond has provided retailers a tentative list of titles planned to ship for a Wednesday, May 20 on sale. Their target date to resume its distribution services is from Newsarama, our friend Chris Arendt. Following its coronavirus shutdown, direct market retailer Ryan Higgins has shared the list on his Twitter account. Diamond told retailers that this list may be modified through the week, but will be finalized by May 1st. So it has been finalized already. DC Comics titles released during our pause in distribution will be included in the first shipment of new weekly products. So DC had recently signed deals with 2 new distributors to start shipping before Diamond services resumed. Those titles will be back. So if you look at the list, it's huge on the DC end of things, because I think they're basically backlogging anything that kind of had shipped out previous to this. But May 20th, it's resuming. May 15th, I think, is the official, phase 1 reopening of the country. And I think Diamond is reflecting, that hope. Obviously, things can always change, but this is a sign of positivity. I think this is a positive sign that we're going to be moving forward. Now, whether or not stores can open, I know in New York, May 15th is supposedly when some non-essential businesses can reopen. However, in New York City, I don't think like comic stores like Midtown will be, allowed to reopen. But upstate New York, they will be. California, they've already started reopening some beaches and some places in general. And I think they're really targeting May 15th to be the retailer opening. So that's a great sign for comic book stores in general. And there's some really good books that are shipping. A lot of the X-Men run stuff going on. There's some Flash stuff that's going on. I know that people have been talking about that on the message boards. What do you think? Your take? Are we dipping our foot in the pool here, getting things back to normal?
So. I don't. My estimation of getting back to normal is probably a little more grim than you're looking for at this point. I don't think we're going to be normal for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, if Diamond opens up again, then was all that consternation last month just panic fire? Where people are talking about the comic book industry is gonna implode. It's over. It's
There are some.
A month later, there's damage done. Definitely, there
was
definitely some damage done. But I mean, if it just opens up and then people start publishing again, people start distributing again, then the industry's not. I mean, how much damage could the industry have taken?
Yeah,
in a month.
I think it's one of those things where, because of the nature of the virus itself, the fact that it was brand new, the fact that it was so contagious, it put people in a panic state. It was dramatic death. It was dramatic panic. And now that time has elapsed, people have been home for 2 months now. Essentially, by May 15th, that would essentially be 2 months. March 17th was, at least for us in New York, when it was the stay-at-home order. I think there's enough time that has passed. People have been allowed to process this, and yeah, I think every day when you just didn't know what this virus was, what it was capable of. I just read an article that says you cannot get it twice now. Scientists in Korea have actually now proven that you can't get a relapse of it. So once you had it and get over it, you're now immune to it. So, and that could change too, but they've now released, these doctors have now released this definitive statement.
That's not what anybody I hear has been saying.
But literally just read the article today on MSNBC. So it's something that was out. And again, just to show you how the news media has has added to this crisis. I was literally watching a recap. Not watching. I was reading a recap of coronavirus articles because I'm trying to get a grip on, what the new normal is and how soon can we get to this new normal without impacting, the general population. In the exact same, thing, there's like these doctors believe the virus is weakened, and then underneath it, and at the very same time, these doctors believe it's only going to get worse. And I'm like, well, now it's like you're reporting all this stuff that we don't know. You're interviewing people in mid,
right? But if they only took one point of view, though, then that's propaganda, right? That's an agenda.
Understood.
I mean, if they introduce the doctors and say it's all just going to get worse, then that's just as propaganda.
I think it's more of an observation of how much quote unquote news we have and the business model that you need to continue to pump in content to the point where now. So it's like they have to write about this stuff.
Your mentality shouldn't be that I don't like this news. I can just go get better news from someplace else. That's bad. That's what's been costing us a lot of our integrity and a lot of the truth lately. It's like, well, I don't like this news, so I'm just going to get the news that I want from someplace else.
Right.
And that's why we are in a place where we have to constantly keep vetting all the information we have through 5 to 6 to 10 sources before we could use that as actual genuine information.
It's also the state of the gatekeepers to where there are no gatekeepers anymore, to the point where you can make a lot of money pumping. You can't. No, I'm not saying I'm not offering a solution to it. I'm merely observing the fact that there's so much information out there, and there is a monetary incentive to pump more information into the system. So, to your point, yes, you can choose which news you want to read.
The demand for bubble news, right? News that I want to hear, goes out, and then people supply that demand, and then they get paid for it. They get monetarily, compensated for providing a bubble for the people, instead of. And I mean,
it's also trending. I mean, it's also what's a trending topic. What is something that people are searching right now, and it's coronavirus. So we need to it doesn't matter what it is. We need to write about coronavirus. We need more articles about coronavirus. And
well, that's the problem. People trusting these outside sources from anywhere.
Right.
As opposed to the direct line. Like, okay, maybe you don't trust MSNBC, right?
Right.
But you should trust the CDC, right? So information coming directly from representatives of the Center for Disease Control.
That's the funny part, though, right? Yes, I would agree with you to an extent, but then I'm also reading stuff where some people are, well, it's not coming from the CDC. It's like this came from the CDC.
But that's that's all the misinformation that you're hearing.
But that's my point. That's all the
misinformation that you're getting.
Right.
That's why you go to the source. That's why you go to the CDC.
If what you're reading is actually sourced from the CDC. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's where it gets very super.
And so as opposed. But that's what I'm saying. When you get a representative directly from the CDC and they're talking, you could probably appreciate that news is genuine news,
right?
As opposed to some article that mentions slightly something that someone who is a cousin of someone who works at the CDC might have said at a dinner party. Right. But you yourself have to be discerning in what kind of information you're digesting.
Yep. No, it is definitely a very but it's all feeding this whole thing just to bring it full circle into the comic book industry. Yes, it's the same thing. When you have the fear of the unknown, everything tomorrow is over. A month from now, a month from now, we don't know what it's going to look like. I'm going to lean on the positivity and lean on the optimistic side of things, that things will continue to get better, and deaths and hospitalizations will continue to go down, which is what we're seeing, and that's a good thing. It's not,
in New York, in this state, it's going up, and other places in the country.
The death rate, but not the hospitalization rate. The hospitalization
that's
rate
going up too.
Seems to fall. In the
going
Midwest?
Up too. In other places.
Okay. I have to
in New York, we're over the curve.
Correct.
Supposedly.
Correct.
But other places, there are new hotspots popping up.
Okay.
According to information I just got this morning.
Okay, so I have to. There you go. Got to read that too. So I guess to answer your question, no, the comic book industry is not dead. Yes, this is going to impact it in some way, shape, or form, and maybe we just won't know for a while. So, boy, what really uplifting episode today of Rogue Wave Podcast. Next week, we're going to pick a blockbuster of years past, because this was supposed to be Black Widow. This was supposed to be Black Widow Wednesday when we were going to review Black Widow, but unfortunately that is not the case. So we're going to pick a blockbuster of yesteryear. I'm leaning toward Iron Man, the original Iron Man. Do a little retro review. It's Iron Man versus Avengers, possibly, in terms of movies that of May blockbuster next week. We'll see you then. Rogue Wave.